code is now free. The value has shifted from software to data and the problem that you want to solve. If you're just going to build a wrapper around LLM models, that will very easily get disrupted. The startups that are going to be successful are going to be the ones that are solving the real challenge. The problems are so distinct that it is not worth for OpenAI or Anthropic to go and come and disrupt that space. There has been never a better time to be a founder, quite honestly. Like, you're building an infrastructure product that would have taken like 10 years to build an enterprise grade, industrial hardened product now can get made in a year's time frame. But down the line, what we see as enterprises start adopting the agentic workflow more and more in their production environment, there are new class of problems that are emerging. AI is going to become a memory problem. If you see right now, bottleneck is on the DRAM side, but even the token context has become so large that you need to push it down to a separate layer where that layer can feed to the GPUs on the token side of things as well. Agents like people, whether it is physical agents or software agents, they need to hold a memory, and based on that memory, they can make that decision. So all the problem is going to get condensed into the form of long context memory.
Garima, a few years ago, raising $20 million felt like a huge milestone. Today, we're seeing founders raise that much before they've even found product market fit. What fundamental assumption about startup building has changed, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think when we did our Series A in 2016, we did a fundraise of at 20 million, and that time it was one of the biggest Series A in our data storage space. So I completely am with you. Like, nowadays the numbers and the scale has completely changed and transitioned, right? Even if you see in last 5 years, the biggest companies are all in $1 trillion mark. SanDisk has hit $1 trillion a couple of weeks back. So the economics of everything has changed and become much more bigger. So of course that is getting reflected in the private equity market.
The reason I thought this would be a very interesting conversation for us to tap into, because I feel like it's timely with what's happening in venture, what's happening in Silicon Valley, in the startup ecosystem, but also I think about your background, your educational background, and now you're running your own company, you're building, and you're seeing these transformations happen in the industry. As you said, what seemed big back then is now small, and obviously big looks very differently. As somebody who's, you come from this economical accounting and you understand finance, you look at these things through a different lens. How do you assess this?
I've forgotten everything that I've studied in the So my PhD was actually in financial economics, and my topic was that how much of the R&D expense needs to be capitalized versus expense, to show the value of the company and how much of that gets reflected in stock. So of course that was ages back, but I think the fundamental of economics doesn't change overall when it comes to the scale of it. And one of the things is that whenever there is the scale change rapidly, whether it is, in terms of the investments that are happening in the space, or, the data centers built out that we are seeing because of all getting propelled in the AI workloads and so on, the economics has changed considerably, right? I mean, the data center build-outs are like close to like $100 billion of investment right at the get-go of it, right? And then everything flows through that in terms of what goes on from infrastructure standpoint. So I think everything is justified as long as there is a clear customer demand at the back of it. And I think what is making people a little bit nervous right now is, the wealth is getting concentrated in few areas, whether it is OpenAI or Anthropic, and then at the back end of it, NVIDIA propelling the GPUs to power this kind of infrastructure. I think it's all good, but I think what is a little bit causing nervousness in the market is just the concentration of the wealth overall in just few key players. And then if the customer demand is not able to justify these $1 trillion valuations that are out there, then it's kind of a impact that you will see down across the industries even. Mm-hmm. So I think that is the nervous part of it. But I think the AI boom that we are seeing, it's very much real. The numbers are real from what we can see in our ecosystem as well, and from all the applications that are getting delivered, and just the consumption of tokens, if you would have seen, mm-hmm. right? From OpenAI or Anthropic, and their revenue multipliers that we are seeing, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I think about, as you said, the concentration of capital, and we'll come back to the financials again, but I'm just wondering from an innovation standpoint with founders who are building, I think one thing that's becoming quite prevalent, especially with the founders I speak with, is by the time they've even built a product, somebody's already beaten to the market, right?
Yes.
We even
Yeah.
hear stories with OpenAI offering free tokens in exchange for equity. What is that about? When you talk about concentration of capital, is there a worry or a concern that now in today's world, being a founder is a little bit scary because, ideas are cheap, right? It's all about execution, but these companies can move way faster. They have a lot more money. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there has been never a better time to be a founder, quite honestly. And, the time to market of certain products has just shrunk. The timelines have just compressed so much. Like you're building it in our space, right? Infrastructure product that would have taken like 10 years to build an enterprise grade, industrial hardened product. Now can get made in a year's time frame, right? So timelines have compressed. So from that standpoint of view, from founders' perspective, there has not been a better time. What I would always tell the founders is that because there is so much going on and there are so many things that can be done, you need to build things that are real and that can solve real problems at the end of the day, because that is where the sustainability comes from. Because if you're just going to build a wrapper around LLM models, that will very easily get disrupted if you don't have enough moat. I think that is the key part of it. It all comes down to, and if you see even how private equity is getting allocated right now, because people have missed the boat. There are investors who have missed the boat on OpenAI or Anthropic, and they want to get a piece of action, right? And this is like an indirect piece of action through investment in certain of these early stage startups that are building startups on top of these LLM engines. But at the end of the day, I think the startups that are going to be successful are going to be the ones that are solving the real challenge. The problems are so distinct that it is not worth for OpenAI or Anthropic to go and come and disrupt that space. I think that's how I really look at how the space is going to evolve.
In the past, your proprietary technology was your moat, but now when everybody has access to the same ML models, you're right, you can't just create a ChatGPT wraparound because that will be disrupted very quickly. But what is the moat? How do you define that?
I think the moat is again coming down to solving serious problems, and also you need to understand how distinct those problems are for others to come and solve, right? Or disrupt your own space. So I think that's how I really look at it. And the same argument can be built for even the SaaS companies that are existing right now, how quickly that model can be disrupted. It all comes down to a couple of things. Are you dealing with customer data? Is that the moat? Because it's all going to come down to the data problem at the end of the day. And then secondly, is it attractive enough for OpenAI or Claude or some other LLM engines to come and disrupt the market themselves? Because they are everything right now, right? From LLM standpoint, these are the two giants out there, and they can go and disrupt every single piece, but they also need to choose their focus at the end of the day, and they cannot disrupt everything out there. So I think as you're thinking and building your hypothesis on certain areas that you can go and disrupt, it might look very attractive and quick to deliver right now, but think about it from long-term perspective. And I think that is where even the conversations about sustainability of revenue really comes into place, that because a lot of these early stage startups are showing a lot of acceleration in terms of revenue, but then again, it will come down to how much sustainable that acceleration is or how much sustainable that revenue is 5 years down the road. And that's how the valuation will also come to fruition for a lot of these startups.
I want to show you, or at least tell you about a case study, or at least a scenario we had at our recruitment business. One of my consultants had asked me recently, he spoke to a candidate, and one of our portfolio companies had only raised 5 million pre-seed. And the candidate said, that's not enough. There's no value, right? I'm just wondering, are the lines getting blurred between fundraising and valuation and the real value in a company? Because maybe you can teach me on how to challenge that question, right? But how do you deal with that? There are still many companies that are raising 5 million or 7 million pre-seed. Not everyone is raising those huge rounds.
There are, and I think it again comes down to what problem you're solving and what market you're addressing, right? For me personally, when I do investments, I always go back to fundamentals, how real it is, right? Does it even make sense? Is this product something down the line I would be using for my organization if it is an enterprise ready product? So that's always the filter that I have. Valuation and all is just, one piece of it. What it does help if you're raising a big round, quite honestly, is you're able to attract bigger talent which is so instrumental in terms of, how fast you can grow the company. So I think that piece definitely helps. Beyond that, if you're getting good investors on your board, that helps you considerably in terms of building those connections and strategizing early on in terms of, just the direction of the company, because there is so much of noise and chatter all across. So I think those two things I would say has value when it comes to, bigger rounds and whatnot. Beyond that, I think just solve real problems. That's just go back to fundamentals. It's don't get too carried away with the noise and short-term trends. Build things for sustainability, because that is going to see you through. Because if you build things for sustainability, even down the line, if you need to pivot yourself, if you need to make changes, you will be able to do it, right? If you're building for a quick flip, maybe, some OpenAI or some other organization is going to acquire you maybe in 2 years' time. That's again something that people do in terms for a quick flip, nothing right or wrong about it. It's a strategy that certain founders take. And if that is what your end outcome is, then you need to pull certain stunts in the market and go home. That's how I look at it.
As somebody who also does investing, when you think about investing, do you invest in the founder?
100%. It's always the founders. You just need to, because at early stage, there is no product, quite honestly, right? There's a hope that you will build
it's a promise.
Magnanimous product. Exactly, right? It always starts with hope. And then you need to place your bets in terms of, okay, is this the right person to deliver on it, or is this even the right person to make changes as needed as the market is evolving? So it's always the founders, no matter what. Even in the later part, not even in the seed, it's as true as in Series A, Series B. Of course, the percentage that you keep attaching to the founders little bit decreases over a period of time, because you have a lot more, infrastructure built in the organization to go and deliver on the vision. You have the right leadership team. If you're Series B, Series C, so the riskiness kind of reduces over a period of time, but it always comes down to how much you have faith and belief in the founders. It's always the pedigree of founders.
Garima, let's take it back to where you are today. I'd love to hear from you a little bit about where you are today, the company you're building, the problem you're solving, and how you see things develop for you.
So when we started in early 2015, end of 2014, the goal was very simple, right? We wanted to capture as much as data on our platform, because we were like, there's nothing outside of what public clouds is, and we wanted to be close to wherever the data is getting generated and solve data store at a massive scale and at a massive performance. It was as simple as that. Down the road, and when we started, right, they viewed data store or object store in a particular way, especially enterprises, cheap and deep, not high performant, but in public cloud, it was always considered as a primary storage. So we wanted to bring the same thinking in the enterprises. That is how we started. Now, if you see all the innovation that has happened on AI analytics front, it's all on object store natively. That is the reason why we are getting propelled, and we are the only one who has built the product natively from grounds up to address the AI native workloads, right? So that has become like a natural propellant for us in a lot of these organizations, whether they are cutting edge organizations or whether they are, Fortune 1000 organizations. They are engaged with us in terms of modernizing their infrastructure to become more cloud native and get those right architectures in. So MinIO becomes the data foundation for bringing all their enterprise data into one place, and then they are able to build that agentic workflow on top of us. That's what the customers are doing right now. But down the line, what we see now is agents become more enterprise. As enterprises start adopting the agentic workflow more and more in their production environment, there are new class of problems that are emerging and challenges that we are looking to address. And it's all coming down to the memory, agents like people, whether it is physical agents or software agents, they need to hold a memory, right? And based on that memory, they can make that decision. So all the problem is going to get condensed into the form of long context memory, how much memory an agent can hold and build on top of it, and how agents can even, two software agents or an agent workflow can even share that memory within each other to make intelligent decisions of the company, right? For the company, if you see in the past, the focus from AI has been, the Gen AI, you address a prompt, it's a static thing. But from moving to agentic workflow, it's all going to be autonomous workflows, right? You want agents to be able to take certain kind of decisions if they see certain kind of things in their environment. That's what autonomous agents are going to do. And for agents to be able to work autonomously, they need to have certain memory footprint within themselves and certain kind of security considerations within themselves that, okay, if this is the considerations, then I can take such and such decision. That is where I feel that for enterprise specifically, from our product roadmap perspective, that's where we are focused in solving. It's the agent memory problem, because AI is going to become a memory problem. If you see right now, bottleneck is on the DRAM side, but even the token context has become so large that you need to push it down to a separate layer where that layer can feed to the GPUs on the token side of things as well. So two distinct things, but it's all going to translate it to a memory problem at the end of the day.
Does that solve the non-deterministic nature of agents as well? When you think about the memory problem, you prompt an agent, you can get 5 different responses every single time. How do we solve that problem?
So I think that problem is different. Prompting an agent is different. Agents, when I talk about agentic behavior, it's all autonomous agents, right? If you build an application that can spin up agents on the fly, you expect that agent to deliver certain things that you're asking it to do. And certain decisions in real time need to happen. It cannot happen, every time statistically that you're querying it. That's not agentic behavior. Human beings, right? Like, think about solving a problem either through blood or through electricity. Electricity is where agents come into play. Blood is where human beings come into play. So, you need to think about agents as your employees in the organizations that can take the decisions and do certain work for you. That's how you should think about agents. Think about agent memory solving the problem of human decision making or agent decision making in that way. Not so much in terms of prompting an agent.
Sure. And that's a huge market. When you look back at when you started the company, getting the product up and running, what was that time frame for you from ideating, getting to MVP, having a product with the customer? How long did that take?
When we started early on, we took an approach. We wanted to keep the product. The philosophy, even the MinIO comes from the name of Minimalist IO. So that has always been the philosophy in terms of building the product, to not overcomplicate things, deliver it what it is expected to deliver to the customers. Build a beautiful product that does what it says it does, and nothing more and nothing less than that. So that's how the product is built overall. And if you see for MinIO, when we started, the AI store journey, we started with SDKs or client side, because we knew that if we can get the SDK or the client side ecosystem adoption, it'll be very easy to build a good server product overall, right? It's storage as a server product, and you need SDKs or client to query or sit on top, or do analysis or do certain other things on top of the storage product. So that's how we started, and that was our hook to get to the vast ecosystem as well when it comes to S3 API compatibility and so on. So it was never about building an MVP, but I think our philosophy has been get the ecosystem right, and that's where you get the bulk of the traction. And the same philosophy is what we are taking for our memory product as well, because there is VLLM engines, inference engines are there that you need to work with. There are, from memory standpoint, there's a lot of research also going on. It's a problem that everyone is trying to address overall. And agentic work kits are there. There are sandbox environments. So it's going to be an ecosystem play overall. And you know how to deliver on that pretty well. So that's our strong suite. So, but the strategy has always been to grab the ecosystem, to grab maximum developer adoption, and then build from there. Because then you can build an excellent product that will be able to cater to multiple different workloads.
Garima, if you were to start back again today and rebuild today in this AI era, what would you do differently?
Oh my God. The thing is that even within the startup community, as with our founder friends, we just keep talking about it. Like right now, it's so easy to build a new product from scratch than to, make that transition over from a cloud to an AI first company, right? That is a big shift. Internally, you need to be AI first, and then your product needs to also address the AI workload. So both those things need to happen. So I think if someone has to start right now, I think it's an excellent time, because you can take decisions right from the scratch, right? Get the right kind of team, get the right kind of talent to begin with, set up things correctly in a way so there is no baggage from the past that you need to go and undo. Now is the best time.
It's almost as if when you have a company, you might as well just start from the beginning again rather than...
It's always the case, but I think AI is just so exceptional. I mean, it's such an amazing time that we are living in, quite honestly. There has been no time better than this in terms to build products that can solve amazing problems. So that's what I tell. It always comes down to what kind of problems you want to solve, what problems are exciting for you to go and solve, and then build a company around it. Because software almost, code is now free, almost free for the tokens. But yeah, I mean, the value has shifted from software to data and the problem that you want to solve.
Do you find yourself now that you're spending, in terms of when you're building, as a company, you're focusing on how much of your usage is the token spend, how much is it open source models that are available? Because I'm hearing a lot of stories now about founders saying they use the tokens, they spend on the big models, but then they are also leveraging open source models.
I think for our AI products that we are building, we use open source models. They're pretty good. Like Quinn is pretty good. There is another small model that is pretty good. I think it's called Kiwi something. And that is pretty good as well. So there are small models that can do the job that you want it to do, and depending on what product you want to build, and those can solve the problem. But I think for coding particularly, I think nothing beats Claude, and of course, like, our spend is quite a bit with them. But you have to think in terms of how much productivity you're getting, the ROI that you're getting from the spend, right? I think Salesforce released the numbers that they're spending around 300 million on tokens. And that's quite exceptional. But if you see how much of productivity that is adding, and also the percentage in the larger scheme of things of the engineering spend, it's still minuscule. So I think the market is still growing. The spends are only going to increase, but it's always going to be a mix of open source and a mix of large models that you see. It depends on what task you want to do at hand, right? Like, for example, DeepSeek is really good at mathematical abstraction. If you're in a business or if you're building a product for that particular use case, or if you are a research institute, you might use DeepSeek. If your use case is that I want to increase the productivity of my sales engineer, for my software engineers, then you would go either with the Codex or you will go with Claude, right? So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day.
Garima, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'm sure we'll need to do this again in person and tackle a different topic. I found this really insightful. One final question I have for you, Garima, is one that we ask every single guest we've ever had on the show. It's about books, because avid reader, I love reading books. The show is all about getting into the mind of our guest and learning about how they think about building, but also maybe a book recommendation as well. What would be your book recommendation?
Currently, I'm simultaneously reading two books. One is Simpsons and the Mathematical Secrets. It's by Simon Singh. I'm a huge fan of Simpsons and Homer particularly. So it's one of the fun books where you can actually see, and a lot of the authors of the show, the writers of the show, are PhD in mathematics. So it's quite interesting to see,
Wow.
it's very, very interesting. Even the jokes, 2 layers down below jokes of mathematical jokes in that series. So I highly recommend it if someone is a mathematician or someone has interest in learning, the secret jokes in Simpsons. So that's something that I'm reading right now, and it's just so wonderful to read. Second book that I'm reading right now in parallel is The Brain That Changes Itself. It is by Norman.
Each of these assumptions is wrong.
It's by Norman Deutsch. It is again a great read. It's about the brain plasticity overall and how brain reframes and maps. And because AI is it's a problem of a brain, and I think you can just draw so many of insights in terms of how brain evolves, and it's not static, or the locality is not, unlike earlier in neuroscience, it was expected that everything is very localized in brain, but that's not the case. As the sensory things changes, brain has plasticity to grow and compensate for the areas which are not performing optimally. So I think that's very interesting piece of it. So I would highly recommend that book if anyone is interested in neuroscience.
Well, it's definitely linked very closely to what you're building around the memory of these agents, which is interesting. The first one, honestly, that's the first time I hear that. That's incredible. And do you know what freaks me out about The Simpsons is how many times they get things right. It's freaky. I don't know how they do this.
It's one of the shows I think you can actually watch to learn certain things and still have fun. So I'm a huge fan of Simpsons. If you see the blackboards or the whiteboards in the where Lisa goes to school, they're like actual algorithms and problem statements that are mathematically correct. So
Wow.
I would highly recommend it.
Garima, it was a pleasure. Honestly, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for making the time to be on Inside the Silicon Mine. I'd love to do this again. I'm sure we'll have so many more things to talk about. But yeah, thank you so much.
Likewise. No, it was a pleasure to be on the show, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Garima. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Inside the Silicon Mind. This podcast is powered by Harrison Clark. For more episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. As always, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind.